She thought it was just a routine ruling, another line of legal text in a system she trusted, but trust can crack quietly, and what she found buried in that court order would unravel everything. Pam Bondi had seen a lot in her career: press cycles, policy shifts, political storms, but nothing made her sit up quite like the breaking banner that flashed across her muted news screen. Judge Evelyn Caro blocks DHS deportation directive. Emergency injunction issued at dawn. The alert ticked by, unnoticed by the assistants buzzing in and out of her office. But Bondi noticed. She always noticed. She paused mid-note, the blue ink of her pen frozen above a legal pad. No warning, no internal notice, just a ruling, broad, sweeping, and unusually timed. She stood cross to her cabinet and pulled the full text of the injunction from a secure printer feed. Page after page, she flipped through it, reading not just the words but the space between them. The language was polished, judicial, but beneath the marble layers of legal decorum, Bondi felt it: hesitation disguised as caution, delay disguised as process. She leaned against her desk and murmured to no one, "This isn't how we do law, this is how we do optics." She'd seen it before. Decisions not born in courtrooms but in conference calls, not shaped by law but by alliances. She tapped her pen once, twice. Her legal team knew that rhythm. It was the sound of lines being drawn. Behind her the city stirred to life. Sirens echoed in the distance. Files pinged in her inbox. But all Bondi saw was the ruling, and what it wasn't saying. She thought it was just a bad ruling. She was wrong. It was the beginning of a storm. The next morning, a courier envelope arrived, unmarked, unrequested. Inside, a printed image, a photograph, time-stamped 4:17 a.m. It showed Judge Caro's senior clerk handing an envelope to a woman in a coffee shop. The woman was flagged by facial ID software as a lead strategist with Courtroom, the Civil Rights Legal Unity Network, an advocacy group, not a legal one. Pam stared at the photo, silent. Her aide waited nervously. Finally, Bondi spoke. "Was this disclosed?" The aides shook their head. "Then we have a problem." She moved fast. Within the hour, her communications team was locked in a secured room. Legal analysts combed through past rulings. Staff scoured federal disclosure databases. No mention of Courtroom, no record of advisory input. But the language in the ruling, the vague phrasing, the oddly activist tone, it made sense now. It wasn't written just for legal minds. It was built for public consumption, like a campaign ad, like a statement. Her deputy brought in more documents. Past memos, sealed filings, meeting calendars from chambers across the judiciary. Patterns emerged. This wasn't the first time. Bondi didn't need proof of conspiracy. She just needed a question no one else had asked. When did judgment stop being judicial? She looked at the photo again. The envelope. The strategist. The silence. And she knew this was bigger than one case. The truth wasn't just in the documents. It was in the silence surrounding them. The studio lights were dim, the set quiet, the host polite but probing. Pam Bondi didn't ask for media. The media asked for her, and this time she said yes. It wasn't her tone that startled the country. It was her precision. "Do you believe Judge Caro acted outside the bounds of her role?" The host leaned in. Pam didn't blink. "I believe process is more than paperwork. It's about public trust. And when rulings sound like editorials, not decisions, we should all start asking who they're written for." She didn't raise her voice. She didn't attack. But her words cut like scalpels. "This isn't personal. It's structural. When judges begin coordinating with policy groups before rulings drop, then we're not talking about law anymore. We're talking about narrative management." The clip aired that night. It hit every platform by morning. Within hours, her words, "It's not personal, it's structural." trended across legal blogs, news sites, even bumper stickers. Some called her brave, others called her reckless. But no one called her wrong. She didn't point fingers. She held up a mirror, and it cracked. Judge Evelyn Caro watched the clip from her office in silence. She didn't flinch, but she didn't smile either. The clerk who stood nearby waited for direction. There was none, only a quiet, tired sigh. Across the city, protests began forming. 2 sides, 2 signs. One side read, "Protect judicial independence." The other, "We deserve answers." Inside federal offices, phones rang. Meetings were scheduled. Officials spoke in hushed tones about containment and optics. Pam Bondi stayed quiet, publicly. Privately, her team was assembling what she called a process map, a record of recent rulings involving emergency injunctions on immigration enforcement. The findings were disturbing. 6 cases in the last year, all lacked full administrative records. All bore signs of third-party language infiltration. Her deputy leaned over the map, eyes wide. "This isn't coincidence," he said. "It's culture." Bondi nodded. "Then we treat it like erosion, quiet, slow, but dangerous." Back in Judge Caro's chambers, an urgent email landed in her inbox. Subject line, "Internal review request, undisclosed external communications." Caro didn't respond. Instead, she closed the laptop and looked out the window. Crowds were gathering, but they weren't yelling. They were watching, listening, waiting. They thought ignoring her would make her fade. It only made her louder. The room was still. The podium bare. No flag backdrop. No talking heads. Just a single microphone. A plain navy blue wall. And Pam Bondi standing beneath a single spotlight. She didn't bring notes. She didn't bring a teleprompter. Just a remote clicker and a mind full of questions that had gone unanswered for too long. The press gathered. Murmurs swirled. Everyone expected fireworks. They got something far more dangerous. Clarity. She tapped the remote. The first slide appeared. A redacted internal memo from the Department of Homeland Oversight. It showed a backlog of over 11,000 asylum cases. In the margin, handwritten in red ink. "Too risky to wait. Move before the ruling drops." Gasps. Phones lit up. Pam turned to the crowd. "This isn't about immigration," she said. "It's about process. And what happens when that process bends beneath pressure the public never sees." Click. Slide 2. An internal message chain between Judge Caro's clerk and a Courtroom strategist, time-stamped hours before the emergency ruling. Blurred names. Clear intent. One message read, "Let's align the tone with our statement." Bondi didn't blink. "I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to reveal." She leaned forward. When judges begin coordinating with advocacy groups behind the curtain, the question isn't whether it's illegal. The question is, who are they really listening to? 15 minutes. That's all it took. But the aftershock lasted days. The press dubbed it the Caro Briefing. And across the nation, a conversation had started that couldn't be silenced. She wasn't tearing the system down, she was pulling the curtain back. Inside a secure federal video conference, 12 judges appeared one by one, some in robes, some in civilian clothes, all with faces tight and eyes sharper than usual. Chief Justice Eleanor Haynes led the call. Behind her was a wall of law books no one ever read anymore, but that still held weight. "Let's keep this brief," she said. Judge Ruiz from Phoenix leaned in. "This isn't about one case. It's about how much space we've given process to drift." Judge Barrett from Utah wasn't so calm. "She's building momentum." The public's not asking legal questions, they're asking moral ones. Some wanted to issue a unified statement. Others warned that doing so would only legitimize Bondi's claims. Judge Waller from New York finally said what no one else dared to. She's not attacking the judiciary. She's redefining what people expect from it. That landed hard. For a moment, the screen was quiet. Then Haynes spoke. "We don't panic. We don't grandstand. But we do listen. And right now, silence is doing more damage than any statement ever could." No resolution came. But something shifted. She wasn't just challenging one ruling. She was redefining what justice looked like from the outside. It came in a plain envelope. No return address, no stamp. Just a hand-delivered manila folder marked Confidential Internal Ethics. Inside, a 22-page dossier. It wasn't just about Judge Caro. It included 6 rulings from 4 different districts. All showed similar trends. Emergency injunctions with unclear procedural origins and private communications with third-party policy organizations. But one section hit like a hammer. A memo written by Judge Mira Langston, a respected figure on the bench, detailing her concerns from as far back as 2021. She noted a pattern. Judges quietly consulting advocacy groups during sensitive case deliberations. She had never spoken out. Until now. Pam Bondi read the memo 3 times, then once more aloud in her office. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She just nodded. "Then it's not just theory," she said. "It's precedent." The next morning, media outlets broke the leak. Headlines rolled out. "Dossier reveals coordinated influence in judicial rulings." Judge Caro's office issued no comment. The silence was starting to feel like confirmation. Justice was still wearing the robe, but it was transparency holding the gavel. The hearing room buzzed like a hive. Cameras, reporters, a packed marble chamber that smelled of old paper and new expectations. Pam Bondi stepped in, leather briefcase in hand, dressed in deep gray. She didn't look like someone coming for a fight. She looked like someone ready to end one. Chairman Julian Mercer cleared his throat. "Attorney General Bondi, thank you for appearing. We begin with your statement." She didn't read from notes. "This isn't about politics," she began. "It's not even about a judge. It's about what happens when the system forgets who it serves and how long the people wait before asking why." She opened her briefcase. Inside, a small stack of Freedom of Information Act responses, redacted but intact. She held one up. "This is an email between a judicial clerk and a policy advocacy group, not discussing law, discussing messaging strategy." Gasps. Cameras zoomed in. "I'm not saying the judge conspired. I'm saying we must ask if the line between influence and impartiality is as clear as we thought." She leaned in. "Trust isn't a robe we put on. It's a mirror we hold up." The chamber froze. No outbursts. Just the weight of a truth no one wanted to say, but no one could deny. The hearing ended in silence, not from fear, but because no one had a comeback. By dawn the next day, Judge Caro had submitted a request for extended leave from the bench. The letter was short, formal, and telling. "To maintain confidence in ongoing proceedings, I will step aside temporarily." She didn't mention Bondi. She didn't have to. Across the nation, newsrooms dissected every syllable of the hearing. But behind the headlines, something quieter and more powerful was happening. Judges in rural districts began holding public quandas. Law schools launched ethics workshops, and for the first time in years, everyday citizens showed up to courthouse meetings not in protest, but with questions. Bondi didn't do interviews. She released no statement. Instead, she returned to work, quietly, steadily, unshaken. The movement didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to everyone who saw in her silence the strength to finally speak up. The case closed, but the conversation didn't. Months passed, the headlines faded, but in towns that rarely saw federal headlines, something new had taken root. Pam Bondi didn't run for office. She didn't publish a memoir. She started attending law school panels, courthouse open houses, and round-table discussions in places that barely made the map. In a high school gym in rural Ohio, a retired nurse asked her, "Do you really think anything changed?" Pam didn't hesitate. Change doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it shows up as a question no one wants to answer and won't go away until they do. In Washington, Chief Justice Haynes issued a memorandum to all active federal judges. The court does not fear scrutiny. It welcomes reflection. And when cracks appear in trust, we must be the first to step forward, not the last. The final paragraph of her note echoed something Bondi once said. Justice isn't fragile, but silence can make it look that way. That memo wasn't leaked. It didn't have to be. Change had already begun. Sometimes the greatest challenge to power isn't protest. It's the question whispered loud enough that everyone hears and no one can ignore. Pam Bondi never asked for this fight. But when it found her, she stood still, asked the hard questions, and let the answers speak for themselves. So now we turn that mirror to you. Do you think she went too far, or just far enough? Was this a warning, or a wake-up call? Let us know in the comments. And if this story challenged, inspired, or even unsettled you, share it because silence isn't neutral, and truth deserves a voice. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the unseen, question the unquestioned, and shine a light where others stay quiet. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and as always, thanks for watching.